AV Shop Talk, Episode 8.
Podcasting from Boston, Massachusetts and Los Angeles, California, this is AV Shop Talk. Covering the latest audiovisual trends and emerging technologies, this is where the AV pros come to talk shop. With your hosts, Nate Schneider and Jason Griffin.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of AV Shop Talk. On this episode, we're pleased to present to you a conversation that we had with Derick Dahl. He is the product manager at iPort and Launchport of the parent company Dana Innovations. It was a great conversation, and we look forward to sharing that with you. But before we jump into that, I'm joined as usual by my co-host, Nate. Nate, how are you?
I'm doing very well tonight. Thank you for asking. And I do have to add, not only did we talk to Derick Dahl, but we talked to him from the Anechoic chamber, which was, I thought, very cool.
Yeah, that was very cool. And he was kind enough to send us a picture after the interview. So when we post the show notes up for this episode at avshoptalk.com, we'll have to share one of those pictures that he sent us. Looks like a really cool facility they have over there at Dana Innovations.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to play around in an anechoic chamber just on my lunch break if I had the chance. That'd be pretty cool. You can hear your heartbeat and all that crazy stuff.
Yeah, we had a little laugh about that because just prior to us recording, that afternoon we were bouncing some emails back and forth, and he said he would be recording there, and I think we both thought that he was actually joking, but turns out he was serious. So.
Yeah, I thought he was just kidding at first because. Yeah, well, you'll hear it in the interview, but what's been going on with you, Jason? What's new in your life this week?
Oh man, busy. We've got we've touched on it in a previous episode before. I've got our very first baby on the way here, due in November, and my wife and I are super excited about that. But we live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's not tiny by any means, but you start talking about a baby and all of a sudden the place feels quite a bit smaller
yes.
than it did before.
Yes, I know the feeling. My wife is about 7 months pregnant right now as well. It's going to be our second.
Right.
But, man, we had to do some rearranging over 4th of July weekend, and I got my office downgraded into the smaller of the bedrooms so that the kids can have the larger bedrooms. Oh man,
sacrifices.
I know. Yeah, my office is I think the only one in the house that doesn't have an air conditioning unit. But you know what? That's the way it should be, right?
Yeah, sweat it out, man.
Yeah. So in case you're wondering, we've wanted to do a video component to this podcast and get the YouTube channel up and running, but because of all these life changes going on in Jason's life and in my life, the backdrop has been like boxes of mess, so it wouldn't make for a very good YouTube background. But eventually, I think we're going to start doing some hangouts on air and uploading some of our episodes there onto the AV Shop Talk YouTube channel.
Yeah, definitely. I think the video component will be great, and I look forward to adding that. But like you said, things just with these life changes going on right now, the second bedroom / office / studio is now being converted into a second bedroom / office / studio / nursery. So we've got quite a bit going on in here, but we're getting there. We're getting very close. The room is starting to take shape, and super excited.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm happy for you and look forward to your new arrival.
Yeah, most definitely.
All right, well, why don't we jump right into the podcast here, get into the interview with Derick of Dana Innovations and iPort and Launchport.
AV Shop Talk.
All right, welcome to AV Shop Talk. I'm here with Jason and with Derick Dahl of iPort and Launchport, which is owned by Dana Innovations. And how you doing today, Derick?
Doing awesome. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm actually here in the Anechoic chamber at Dana Innovations, which is where we test all of our awesome Sonat speakers. I thought it'd be fun to come in here because it's a quiet room and just kind of breathe in the essence of AV.
When I asked you to try, in the email we're setting up for the podcast interview, and I said, if you can find a quiet environment, that would be nice. There's no dogs barking in the background or babies crying or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I'll jump in the anechoic chamber. I thought he was kidding, but the man was serious.
Yeah. Nate and I were having a little conversation about that, Derick, before you jumped on the line, and we both came to the conclusion that you were joking, but you were actually serious. So that's great.
Awesome.
I'm actually serious.
That's awesome. We'll have to, if you can take a picture with your smartphone at some point during the interview and email it to me or something, then we'll get it up on the website and that'll be fun. But let's get right into it. So, if you could give us a brief introduction about your current roles and responsibilities for iPort and Launchport. I know you're a product manager in the consumer electronics world, but could you fill that out for us and our audience and kind of tell us where you're coming from and maybe how you got into the industry?
Sure. So, I'm a product manager, and at Innovation, we have our 3 brands. We have iPort, Sonance, and TrueFig. And what we do is we have a manager of each of those brands. So when I say I'm a product manager, I'm actually in charge of the brand. And iPort, of course, is famous for the old FS and IW docks. And now today we're making Launchport, control mount, and a new one called charge case and stand. And my role here currently, and the roles of our product managers is to basically be the person that wakes up every day thinking all things iPort. And so we look at what are the trends going on in the wider world of Apple, because a lot of our products are very Apple-centric, and so we want to stay right in step with those trends and any changes that would occur there, and make sure that our product roadmap is aligned with that. And with that said, I actually came from Apple, so before coming to Dana Innovations 3.5 years ago, I actually worked at Apple for about 5.5 years. Did a couple things there, but most interestingly, towards the end, was on the marketing team. So there's sort of a nice, jump off point there into the world of custom installation. And really, my goal is to bring the wider world of Apple into custom installation and AV. And so I have a lot of friends still at Apple that I stay in touch with on the product marketing side, on the developer relations side, and the technology licensing sides. And so what we do is we're always talking about kind of what's coming up next. And I always try to kind of peek behind the curtain as much as I can, which they don't let me see as much anymore there at Apple, of course, but we try to keep in step. And so, the purpose of that really is the products that we make at iPort really are serving the integrators, or serving the dealers. We try to create opportunities around shifts in technology caused by Apple. And so I think a great example of that is just the fact that there's this iPad now, right? And so if you go back 4 years ago, there was no such thing as an iPad, and everybody was installing touch panels into the wall to control systems. And all of a sudden, iPad shows up on the market. And so we say, what does this iPad mean for the CD industry? What kind of disruption will occur because of it? And so we answered sort of the call of that, and taking that as a potential threat and turning it into an opportunity for dealers around our control mount product and our Launchport product as well. So that's really what we do. We are tracking trends in the market, and understanding how those trends will affect the world of CI, and aligning our product roadmap to that. In addition to that, then there's sort of the nitty-gritty of defining what those products are, helping with the design process of those products, and making sure that the products are shipping on time, so we can get them out on market as soon as possible. So that's basically a nutshell of what I do.
Great. Well, interesting background, and definitely interested to hear that you came from Apple. I would imagine that's a big asset in the position you're in, where you're constantly trying to adapt your products and meet the latest and greatest spec from Apple. You touched on a lot of your background. Can you, just for people who are listening who might not be familiar with all of the different products, because you named a few of them there, iPort and Launchport, and I think you said the new one was Control Port, I believe you called it. Can you give a brief overview of what the differences are between those product families in general terms?
Sure. So the active product categories under the iPort brand there's three of them. One is control mount, and control mount is a in-wall mount and charging system for iPads. So it basically turns an iPad into a touch panel into the wall. There's Launchport, which is a hybrid wall mount charger for iPad, and also a tabletop mount charger for iPad. And then there's charge case and stand, which is just a tabletop mountain charger for iPad. So we sort of have a spectrum of products all focused around charging, mounting, protecting iOS devices in the home or in the commercial space.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I've worked pretty extensively with your products in the residential side, and I believe Nate has some experience with your products on the commercial side. What's sort of do you have a feel for the split kind of that you guys have in your company in terms of where your products are going in different verticals like residential, commercial, maybe government install? What's kind of the bulk of your market that you serve?
Yeah, I think it's different for each category. For control mount, we see the majority of installs going into residential, although I wouldn't discount a lot of the great commercial applications for control mount. And so far as using an iPad as a digital signage piece in an office building, maybe outside of a conference room to display the meeting status or the status of the meeting room. Launchport is pretty much split down the middle. We see a ton of commercial applications for Launchport just because of the versatility of the fact that Launchport is a magnetic mount and inductive charger. So you can literally stick the iPad in its case on any metallic surface. You can put a wall mount. Actually doesn't have to go on a wall. It can go on any surface. It can go in vehicles. It can go in vessels. So we see just a ton of really interesting applications for Launchport. And then charge case and stand, we see a big resonance in just the direct-to-consumer market where we sell charge case and stand right on our website. And it's a great economical solution to elegantly charge and mount your iPad on a desk, but also has awesome implications for the CI space and using it to have that iPad always handy for automation and control.
Yeah, and I've seen that product is actually sold in the Apple Store, at least online. I don't know. Are you guys selling that in the retail stores as well?
Yeah, we have charge case and stand in the Apple Store, and that's pretty much it for now. But an interesting story about charge case and stand, Apple saw what we were doing with Launchport. And they said, this is really cool. We like what you're doing with eliminating the wires, making it very easy to mount an iPad, to dismount it without undoing any clamps or what have you. And they said, we'd love to have a more affordable version of this for our own stores. And so what we did with Charge Case and Stand, it was a neat project. We actually worked with Apple's product marketing team and Apple's engineering team to develop the product. And I think the results really speak for themselves. It's an amazing, sleek, elegant solution for not only wrapping a nice case around the iPad, but also for easily taking it on and off the stand. And there's some features that Apple really wanted to see that we definitely delivered on with Charge Case and Stand in the case, where the case is actually smart cover compatible. So we embedded little micromagnets into the side of the case so that your smart cover perfectly fits onto the case. And we even created a removable lightning connector module so that if you needed to get access to the lightning jack while you're traveling and using your iPad cable to charge the case, you didn't have to take the whole case off. And so those are some unique features that you don't really see on iPad cases that we incorporated with some of the help of some of the Apple folks.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so you already answered one of my questions I had for you here. You said earlier that you were Apple centric, and it sounds like that's primarily the main focus of the brand that you manage is supporting Apple products. At some point, do you think that you're going to try to expand that, to support the Android platform or Android devices or Samsung or some of these other manufacturers, or what goes into making those types of decisions?
Good question. We have a product roadmap that has many different product concepts that are defined, but that we don't necessarily produce. And we've been watching the surge of Android market share pretty closely. We all of the products that we've made, we've designed them both from an electronic and a mechanical standpoint to support Android smart devices. The tipping point for us really will be when we see a large-scale adoption of Android devices in our core market, which is, of course, AV home automation. And you'll hear me, you might have heard me use terms like CI or CDS, CI custom installation, or the CDA trade organization. So until we see a mass adoption of Android in this space, we're kind of apprehensive to build products for Android tablets. And the other reason I'd say why we'd be apprehensive at this point is because there are so many different types of Android devices. And we like to think of Android as a single device, but it's really a platform that thousands of devices are built off of. And it's very hard if you're making physical goods that need to form fit to those devices to make so many different permutations of them, because then it doesn't become cost effective for anybody.
Right, because you could probably count on one hand, or maybe two hands, how many different form factors of iPads there are, or iPods there are, or iPhones there are. But yeah, when you start getting into Android and some of these other platforms, like you said, it's thousands of different devices. So coming up with a sleeve that fits all those different devices, I can see how that would be become a challenge. But it does seem like Launchport with the inductive charging, it seems like most of the technology is in the dock or in the wall mount, and it's just that sleeve. Can you talk about the sleeves and how they do this inductive charging and what goes into that?
Sure. So Launchport, if you're not familiar, you can check it out at launchport.com for all the listeners, is a system comprised of a sleeve and a station. So the sleeve wraps around an iPad and has a connector, whether it's 30-pin or lightning connector, that connects power into the iPad. And then there's a station, which can either exist on a wall or on a tabletop, that contains an inductive charging circuit. And there's a corresponding inductive charging circuit and coil in the sleeve as well. But what we do is we actually transmit, which can be up to 15 watts of energy, transmitted over the air from the station into the sleeve. We do this, through the magic of inductive charging. And what's neat about that number, 15 watts, is if you've looked at any of the specs of tablets, 15 watts of energy can pretty much charge any tablet on the market, with the exception of the Microsoft Surface. But pretty much all the Android tablets that exist and the iOS devices that exist can receive adequate power, within that 15 watt band. And so certainly all the iPads, we can easily charge them, and we can charge the Androids. So if we wanted to make a sleeve that used the Launchport stations for an Android device, we certainly could. And it's just a matter of us, going to production of the plastic pieces mainly. Inductive charging in general is sort of pretty neat. And when you get down into the details of what you're actually doing, you're effectively using a magnetic field to push electrons out over the air, and those electrons are then captured by another sort of corresponding magnetic field. And it's really interesting how that works. Launchport is the only inductive charging system on market that powers an iPad.
Yeah, and I was actually...
And we get a lot of questions about this. Launchport doesn't use any standard, if you will, for inductive charging. Like there's the Qi standard from the Wireless Power Consortium, and there's another standard that Qualcomm is working on. But those standards actually only go up to 5 watts, and they're only good for powering smartphones. And we created our own standard for inductive charging of an iPad, or any tablet for that matter. And still to this day, we have the only solution on market for inductively charging iPads.
Yeah, and Derick, I was actually going to ask you about that, because frankly, I think it's surprising. I think the Launchport is a great product, and I'm kind of surprised that there's not any real direct competition to you guys. Do you have some patent that on your product that you think kind of prevents that, or what do you attribute that to?
Sure. I think it's a couple things. Number one, we definitely have Launchport patented. which is a nice thing for us. But when we got into the research and development for Launchport, we spent a lot of time on it, and the product that we eventually went to market with had multiple years of research behind it. And if you think about it, an inductive charging circuit is kind of similar to a speaker in a way, because we're using magnetism and electronics. And we have a lot of smart guys that work on speakers here, of course, because we have our Sonance brand.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of an interesting serendipity of bringing the right minds together at the right time to focus on the right challenges. And we were able to solve the problem of transmitting that much energy over the air, while also making sure that our product was safe and it was compliant with, the FCC and different certifications throughout the world.
I see. So just to circle back a little bit, it sounds like the kind of the main challenge is the amount of energy that you guys are able to transmit between the dock and the sleeve.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I think it's hard to find any other competition for inductive charging of iPads. Whenever you increase the amount of energy that you're transferring, you exponentially increase the propensity for inefficiencies and really the side effects of inefficiencies. And so, there's certain things that happen when you have an inefficiency of power transfer. You have bleed out through other forms of energy. So you have noise, you have heat, and none of those side effects are desirable. And so the challenge is, how do you create the most efficient transfer as possible, most amount of energy as possible, so that you mitigate those bad side effects. And that's the thing that's very hard to figure out. And that's kind of part of our secret sauce.
Awesome. Well, speaking of competition, this sort of ties into another question that I wanted to ask you, and that's about your OEM module. So you guys basically have, provided the opportunity for OEMs to take your dock, your inductive charging dock, and kind of repurpose it into applications of their own. Presumably for custom docks. Can you give some examples of maybe some cool applications that you've seen people doing with that OEM module?
Sure. We do have that as something that's available. It's more of something that's available for strategic partnerships with other manufacturers. It may not be something that is available for maybe an AV integrator. But what we have seen is some interesting applications for creating alternative mounts, mainly for different types of vehicles and vessels. So you imagine you have this wall station, you have this base station. Well, they may not be the right type of mount in, let's say, a boat or an airplane or things like that. But if we can just provide the magic elements of the station and allow the subject matter expert in that vertical market to finish the rest of the mount, then that's a really cool combination for that particular vertical market.
Cool. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I know that sometimes we work on homes in the high-end residential market out here in Los Angeles where a really custom solution might be required. It's actually good to know that OEM module exists, but it doesn't sound like it's something that's necessarily geared for an integrator to kind of tweak. It sounds like it's more of a partnership with manufacturers. Have you ever had integrators kind of inquire about using that module in any unique ways, or do you guys make an effort consciously to limit that to manufacturer partnerships?
We're definitely open to those ideas, but it's something that it's mainly the business process management to be able to support the influx of ideas. So any idea around using the puck, as we lovingly call it, the little circular portion of Launchport, which is the module, it requires a review process and just sort of checks and balances to make sure that it's going to be used in the best way possible. So it's mainly just is that reason.
Okay, now Derick, I am somewhat familiar with the iPort. I think it's the it's like the F22 or the FS22.
Yeah.
I think that's the model number. I might be getting it wrong, so excuse me if I missed by one digit. But so it's a dock for the iPod, and it has inputs and outputs. Can we talk inputs and outputs from some of the other product lines? I know the iPort has analog audio out and RS-232, which is big for integrators, as well as DC power that you can extend. But now when we start getting into some of these other product lines, like Control Mount and Launchport, do they support outputs for analog audio, for example, or video of some sort? Or
Yeah, good question. So the FS docks and the IW docks that we made for many years, we did make a decision last year to discontinue those guys, first of all. So the main reason why we did that was because of the user habits. So people today now have smartphones that all of their music lives on, and they want to with them at their side in their pockets. They don't want to have them live on a dock when they're at their home. And so that was sort of the main reason why we decided to move away from the FS and IW docks. But to answer your question about IOs for our current product lines, we do have an audio out kit option for the Control Mount product.
okay.
And the Launchport product is only a charging solution. The charge case and stand is only a charging solution.
Okay, I think that was my big question. Was the charging seemed really convenient and really cool, but I was just trying to figure out, is there some way that they can provide analog audio out of that, or maybe RS-232 control for certain applications? From an integrator's perspective, it's good to know that.
Yeah, what we see is sort of the main use case for the mounts and the chargers is that the iPad is running some sort of control app or some sort of AV source and zone control app that's communicating over Wi-Fi back to a central processor, what have you, and that the iPad itself is basically just a controller in that scenario. It's not actually being the source for the audio, if you will.
Gotcha. Well, I think Jason might have one more question for you, and then we'll probably start to wrap things up here.
Yeah. So my question was kind of a follow-up to what we were talking about in terms of audio outputs on your devices, and was just curious. Nowadays, most of the systems that we're doing, we're not really including any sort of dock at all for media because of technologies like AirPlay and Sonos, where users can just stream their music wirelessly straight from their device into their music system. And I was just curious if that sort of emerging technology was also something you guys saw on the horizon when you decided to discontinue those certain products, or did that not factor into that decision?
Oh, it absolutely did. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. The proliferation of AirPlay-like technologies like Sonos, and there's a few others as well, was certainly a key factor in that. And it's something that when you look at our industry, you really look at the types of customer or clients that we serve, technology trends that we see happen immediately for maybe the mass market or maybe the younger demographics. They don't hit as immediately to maybe the core demographic of custom installation electronics. And so it definitely took a few years for AirPlay and Sonos and technologies like this to finally take hold. But I think that we're definitely in sort of the prime of that now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Derick. Before we kind of close out here, just like to try to get a personal connection with everybody we have on the podcast and just kind of ask them, when they're not busy, working in consumer electronics or managing products and brands, what do you like to do in your free time? Do you have any hobbies, or are you like a full-time, tech guy even outside of work, or, what do you like to do outside of work?
I like to play music. I'm actually a bassist, so I play in a couple bands.
Nice.
Have a lot of fun doing that, and also do a lot of rock climbing, so that's fun. We've got some great rock climbing out here in California, Joshua Tree National Park. So that's a lot of fun. And then I also do just a lot of, I guess you might call techno philosophy with just some buddies of mine that are also in the tech industry. We just get together and have some beers and talk about what's going on. A friend of mine, Tiago Fort, and myself, we contribute periodically to some technology blogs and technology periodicals. So I wrote an article a few weeks ago for VentureBeat magazine on sort of the business case for why Apple is going to make iWatch. So if you guys want to check that out, that's kind of a fun article.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I've got, in the style of Apple, I have one more thing for you guys that I want to tell you about. It's kind of a cool surprise. And in fact, it's something that we're officially announcing today at iPort, which is we are adding buttons to Launchport sleeves.
Oh,
So what this means is you now can put programmable buttons on a Launchport sleeve that function independent of the iPad, even if the iPad's off. And those buttons will talk back to a variety of different control systems. So you can now have immediate access to key controls in an automation system at your fingertips, while also having the benefit of the iPad and all the fun things that the iPad can do, whether it's automation or anything else that you'd want it to do.
Wow, that sounds really cool. Actually, that solves a big problem that I think a lot of integrators have with iPads instead of the traditional touch panels. Is having those hard buttons and kind of the always on nature of those is really nice and convenient. And I know we're kind of running out of time here, but can you touch on that just a little more? Like, how are you guys communicating? Is this something that works with, I guess, the common automation platforms like Crestron, Savant, AMX, Control 4? Like, do you have partnerships and things worked out already with them, or how does the integration portion of that work?
Sure. So it's actually something that we're pretty excited about. We partnered with Lutron using Lutron's Clear Connect technology. So that's their proprietary Wi-Fi, or I should say RF protocol. And our sleeve buttons are basically a Pico. So for any of the guys out there that have used a Pico to actually be set up as a Phantom keypad in a control system like Crestron or Control 4, or to be monitored and used to activate state triggers in Savant or macros in RTI, it's the exact same process. So basically, all you need is one of our sleeve buttons. You need a single piece of Lutron hardware, which would basically just be a repeater, like a Radio Ratsu repeater or the new Caseta Smart Bridge Pro. And you can then communicate with any control system that currently has a Lutron driver, which would be RTI, Savant, Crestron, Control 4, and many others. And you can absolutely set up our buttons to activate scenes, macros, or specific controls.
Oh, that's really cool. And yeah, no need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, that makes perfect sense that you guys would partner with Lutron on something like that. I'll be definitely excited to get my hands on one of those. Have to start specifying those for jobs. Is there? Do you guys have a date for general availability on those?
Sure, those are actually available for pre-order now, and those will be shipping in September. And of course, at the CEDIA trade show this year, we'll have a fun booth put together where we can show how the product works and give everyone a demo.
Awesome.
Great. Well, you heard it here on AV Shop Talk. Thank you for sharing that little bit of news for us there. For anybody that is really looking forward to having those hard buttons there on the sleeves to be able to program, I think that's a very cool functionality. Definitely gives integrators some more tools in their tool belt to work with. So appreciate that. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you more, maybe on social media, or I know you mentioned a blog post that you contributed to. Do you have any blogs of your own or social media accounts where people can look you up?
Yeah, you can hit me up on Twitter. It's just at Derick Dahl, DerickDahl. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn if you want to, and just search my name, and be happy to talk to you and see what's going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and share a little bit of your knowledge base with our listeners of the AV Shop Talk podcast. And we'll definitely have to keep in touch, Derick. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
And there you have it. from the Anechoic chamber. Derick Dahl, everyone. That was a little bomb he dropped at the end there with those physical touch buttons that are physical buttons that live on the sleeve. What did you think about that, Jason?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I'm not sure, like in your side of the business, in commercial in general, how big of a deal you thought it was. I can tell you from a residential standpoint that is a very exciting development, and I look forward to specifying those and getting some of them into some jobs and playing around with them. I think it's really smart that they used existing technology basically in the fact that they selected Lutron, the Clear Connect protocol, basically to run those buttons. Because when you think about it, every home automation system like Savant, Crestron, AMX, they're all of the heavy lifting has already been done to integrate that with Lutron. So those home automation systems are basically agnostic as far as they just see that button as another Lutron keypad button. So anything you could do with Lutron, you can do with this thing, and I think that was a smart move.
I think definitely for some unique jobs that come our way where we need to use iPads, I agree with what you said. I think it's cool to kind of have that functionality in our back pocket.
Yeah. It's just one of those things in residential where one of the last great sort of benefits that you couldn't really go against with an iPad in terms of like traditional touch panels like a Crestron is that they had the always on hard buttons on the side. So you could do some critical functions like volume up and down in the zone, maybe a lighting scene or two and that sort of thing on your touch panel. And you couldn't really do that with an iPad because you'd have to wake it up, swipe, unlock, open the app, all of that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So basically just having a few hard buttons there, it may not sound like a big deal to some, but I think it's a really nice feature, and I think it'll solve a lot of problems that we have as residential integrators.
Yeah, definitely cool to hear about some new developments there with those buttons. So just wanted to thank our listeners here. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of AV Shop Talk, and you can leave us a voice message through SpeakPipe. If you go to avshoptalk.com/SpeakPipe, you can tell us what you thought of the episode, or give us some comments or questions, or anything. What do you think people should share, Jason? What would you want to hear the most from a potential listener?
Yeah, I think probably what I'd like to hear most is just some feedback on the show, maybe some suggestions for topics or specific questions about some of the topics that we've covered. But you know what? It's wide open. SpeakPipe is a really cool platform. It's just a really simple way. You call in, leave a voicemail. It could be up to 90 seconds. And just let us know what's on your mind. Just call in to say hi, and we'll feature you on the show. We look forward to hearing from some of you out there in the audience, and SpeakPipe is a great way to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You can find us on Twitter at AV Shop Talk, or you can visit the website, avshoptalk.com. Shop Talk podcast is produced independently by Jason Griffin and myself, Nate Schneider. Musical contributions for the intro and outro music coming from Colin Owens, and voiceover talent from John Perry. Stay tuned for episode 9, where we talk to Gerald Stevens, creator of the AV Installation Nightmare Facebook group.
AV Shop Talk,